How can one midnight kiss at a crowded party turn into the moment your life is split in two? What starts as a game to make him jealous ends with a legal envelope in my shaking hands, in front of everyone I once called friend. Can I really blame him for what comes next, when my own plan is what set the match to our marriage? I'm Sybilla Vane, 33 years old, and I thought I was clever. Management consulting pays well, our suburban home gleams with success, and my husband Nathaniel, Nate to everyone else, seemed perfectly content in our predictable life. Too content, too calm, too indifferent. That's why I invited Julian Hart to our New Year's Eve party. "You're sure about this?" my sister Tessa asked, watching me circle Julian's name on the guest list with deliberate strokes. "Inviting your ex to a party with Nate? It's just a test," I said, the words rolling off my tongue like honey. "Julian and I are friends now. If Nate really loves me, he'll show some emotion for once. Some jealousy, anything." Tessa laughed, shaking her head. "You're playing with fire, Syb." But I wasn't playing. I was orchestrating. The party was perfect. 12 of our closest friends, champagne flowing, the house decorated in gold and silver. Julian arrived exactly when I'd coached him to, looking nervous but handsome in the navy blazer I'd suggested via text. "Sybilla," he said, kissing my cheek a fraction too long. "Thanks for inviting me." "Of course," I replied, loud enough for Nate to hear from across the room. "We're all adults here." Nate was mixing drinks at our marble bar, his movements precise and methodical, as always. He glanced up, nodded politely at Julian, and returned to his task. No flash of anger, no territorial display, nothing. My best friend Mara sidled up to me, champagne flute in hand. "He's taking this well," she observed, watching Nate pour whiskey with steady hands. "Too well," I muttered. "Watch this." I walked over to Julian, who was awkwardly hovering near the appetizer table. "Come on," I said, linking my arm through his. "Let me introduce you to everyone." For the next 2 hours, I played the perfect hostess with Julian as my shadow. We laughed at inside jokes from college. I touched his arm when he told stories. I made sure we were always in Nate's line of sight. Nate continued serving drinks, making small talk, playing the gracious host. His mother Judith watched from the corner, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. His father Paul had already retreated to the den with 2 other husbands, probably discussing golf or the stock market. 10 minutes to midnight," someone called out. My heart raced. This was it, the moment I'd been planning for weeks. The kiss that would finally crack Nate's infuriating composure. Everyone gathered in the living room, champagne glasses raised, eyes on the television countdown. Julian stood beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same one he'd worn when we dated 5 years ago. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! I turned to Julian and kissed him, not a friendly peck, but a real kiss, the kind that leaves no room for interpretation. His lips were soft and familiar, and for a moment, I felt the thrill of rebellion coursing through my veins. The room went quiet, except for the television's continued celebration. When I pulled away, Julian's face was flushed, his eyes wide with panic. I looked around for Nate's reaction, the jealousy, the anger, the passion I'd been trying to provoke for months. He was gone. "Where did Nate go?" I asked, my voice higher than intended. "Kitchen," Mara said quietly, her expression unreadable. The party guests exchanged glances. Judith Vane looked like she'd swallowed glass. 2 of my co-workers whispered near the fireplace, their eyes darting between me and the empty space where my husband had been standing. I should go," Julian stammered, already backing toward the door. "No, stay," I insisted, but he was already grabbing his coat from the closet. "Happy New Year, everyone," he called out weakly before disappearing into the night. The party died after that. People made polite excuses and filtered out in pairs, leaving behind half-empty champagne flutes, and the lingering scent of my mistake. I found Nate in his study, door closed, light off. "Nate?" I knocked softly. "Can we talk?" Silence. "It was just a silly New Year's kiss," I called through the door. "It didn't mean anything. You know that, right?" Still nothing. I pressed my forehead against the cool wood. "I just wanted you to react, to show me you still care." The lock clicked. The next morning, I woke up alone. Nate's side of the bed was made with military precision, which meant he'd either never come to bed or had gotten up before dawn. Both possibilities made my stomach churn. I padded downstairs in my silk pajamas, expecting to find him in the kitchen with his usual black coffee and morning news. Instead, I found a note on the granite countertop, taking Grace to Mom's for the day. We need space. Grace. Our 10-year-old daughter had spent the night at a friend's house, spared from witnessing my spectacular display of poor judgment. At least I'd managed to protect her from that. My phone buzzed with messages from last night's party guests. Most were polite thank yous that felt forced. But 4 messages made my blood run cold. "Nate, if you need to talk, I'm here. What happened last night wasn't okay." From my coworker, Jennifer. "That was hard to watch, man. Call me." From our neighbor, Tom. "I've got your back if you need anything." From Nate's college friend, Mike. "We saw everything. Happy to provide a statement if needed." From Sarah, another coworker. "Statement? What kind of statement?" I scrolled through my own messages, finding only one from Mara. "Hope you're okay today. That got intense." Intense. That's what she called it. I spent the morning deleting text messages, the ones where I'd told Julian when to arrive, how to dress, what stories to tell, the ones where I'd called it my jealousy test and promised it would wake Nate up, the ones where I'd detailed exactly how I planned to kiss Julian at midnight. Delete, delete, delete. But when I tried to access our home security system to delete the doorbell camera footage, I found myself locked out. The password had been changed. "Shit," I whispered, staring at the error message on my phone screen. Nate worked as a divorce mediator and forensic accountant. He understood digital evidence better than anyone. If he'd changed the security passwords, it meant he was already thinking like a lawyer. I called Mara. "Can you come over? I need to talk to someone." She arrived 20 minutes later with coffee and croissants, her face carefully neutral. "So," she said, settling onto our white leather couch, "want to tell me what last night was really about?" "It was supposed to be harmless," I said, curling up in the matching armchair. "Just a way to get a reaction out of him. He's been so distant lately, so cold. I thought if he saw me with Julian, it might remind him what he could lose." Mara sipped her coffee slowly, and instead he disappeared, and now people are talking about statements, and I can't access our security system, and he took Grace to his mother's. The words tumbled out in a rush. "Syb," Mara said gently, "you kissed your ex-boyfriend in front of your husband and a room full of friends, at your own party. What did you think would happen?" "I thought he'd fight for me," I whispered. "By fighting, you mean getting jealous and possessive. By showing some emotion. Any emotion. Do you know what it's like being married to someone who treats everything like a business transaction? Who never gets angry or passionate or anything?" Mara was quiet for a long moment. "Have you considered that maybe he shows love differently? That maybe public displays of jealousy aren't his style?" "Then what is his style?" "Because I've been trying to figure it out for 8 years of marriage." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Nate's attorney, David Chen. Please refrain from contacting my client directly. All communication should go through me." Attorney. He'd hired an attorney. "Oh God," I breathed, showing Mara the message. Her face went pale. "Syb, what aren't you telling me?" "Nothing. I mean, I might have used our joint account to buy Julian a watch last week, as a thank you gift for coming to the party. But it was just a friendship gift." "How much?" 3,000. Jesus Christ, Sybilla. It's our money. I'm allowed to spend it. But even as I said it, I knew how it looked. Wife buys expensive gift for ex-boyfriend days before engineering a public kiss. Wife deletes incriminating text messages. Wife can't access security footage because husband has locked her out. Wife looks guilty as hell. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Vane, this is Detective Rodriguez with the County Sheriff's Office. We've received some concerning reports about last night's incident. Would you be available to come in for a voluntary interview? The room spun. What kind of reports? We've had 4 witnesses contact us about what they observed at your residence. They're concerned about potential domestic disturbance issues. There was no domestic disturbance. My husband never even raised his voice. Ma'am, that's exactly what we need to discuss. I didn't go to the sheriff's office. Instead, I called in sick to work and spent the day trying to control the narrative spiraling out of my hands. The group chat from last night's party had exploded with messages I wasn't included in. I only knew because Mara showed me screenshots, her face grim. Jennifer, I can't stop thinking about how calculated that looked. She had it all planned. Tom, did you see Nate's face? He just shut down. It was brutal to watch. Sarah, I found out she invited the ex specifically for this. Someone needs to tell Nate he has witnesses. Mike, already did. Gave him my number and told him to call if he needs anything. They're treating me like I'm some kind of monster, I said, pacing around my kitchen while Mara sat at the island, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Syb, you need to understand how this looked from the outside. You orchestrated a public humiliation of your husband. At your own party, in front of his parents, your co-workers, your friends. It was a kiss, one kiss. It was calculated emotional abuse. The words hung in the air like a slap. Mara had been my best friend since college. She was supposed to be on my side. You think I'm abusive? I whispered. I think you used Julian as a weapon against Nate. I think you planned it for weeks. I think you're more concerned about getting caught than about what you did to your husband. Get out. Syb, get out of my house. She left without another word. Alone in my pristine kitchen, I opened a bottle of wine at 2 p.m. and started making calls. Damage control, spin management, all the skills I used for my consulting clients, now deployed to save my own reputation. I called my parents first. Sybilla, honey, we heard about the party, my mother said, her voice tight with worry. Judith called us this morning. Of course she did. Nate's mother had probably been on the phone all morning, spreading her version of events to anyone who would listen. It's being blown out of proportion, Mom. It was just a silly New Year's kiss that went too far. Nate's overreacting. She said there's video, sweetheart, from your security camera. My blood turned to ice. What video? The doorbell camera caught you, coaching this boy, telling him exactly when to arrive, how to act. It looks very intentional. How could Judith possibly know what's on our security camera? Nate showed them, honey. The whole family saw it this morning. I hung up and immediately called Nate's phone. It went straight to voicemail, his attorney's voicemail. You've reached the law office of David Chen. If this is regarding the Vane matter, please leave a detailed message and we'll respond within 24 hours. I tried calling Julian next. He answered on the first ring, his voice shaky. Sybilla, I can't talk to you. My lawyer said, Your lawyer? Julian, what the hell is going on? They want me to give a statement about what you asked me to do, about the things you said about your marriage. What things? You know what things. About wanting to make it explode. About using me to punish him for being too calm. About how you needed him to fight for you or you'd make him sorry. I didn't remember saying that last part, but wine had been flowing freely during our planning conversations. Julian, we're friends. You wouldn't do anything to hurt me, would you? You already hurt yourself, Syb. I'm just trying not to get dragged down with you. He hung up. By evening, I'd lost 4 friends. My parents were disappointed, and my sister Tessa had left 3 increasingly cold voicemails asking me to explain what really happened. The house felt enormous and empty. Grace was still at her grandmother's. Nate was somewhere else, probably with his attorney, building a case against me with surgical precision. I poured another glass of wine and opened my laptop, Googling emotional abuse divorce grounds and witness testimony family court. The search results made my stomach drop. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, calculated humiliation, premeditated psychological harm, all terms that could describe what I'd done on New Year's Eve, all grounds for divorce in our state, all reasons a judge might award Nate primary custody, the house, and most of our assets. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Syb, this is Tom. I'm sorry, but I gave Nate my statement today. What you did wasn't okay. I hope you get help." Another one from Sarah. "I testified about what I witnessed. I hope you understand why I had to tell the truth." And another from Jennifer. "I spoke to Nate's lawyer. I'm sorry it came to this." 4 witnesses, 4 statements, 4 friends who now saw me as the villain in this story. I was completely alone. The process server found me in the glass lobby of my consulting firm 3 days later. "Sybilla Vane?" she called out, her voice carrying across the marble floor and soaring ceiling. I was walking toward the elevator with 2 partners, discussing a client presentation. The lobby was full of people, employees, clients, delivery personnel. Everyone turned to look. "Yes," I said, though I already knew what was coming. "You've been served." She handed me a thick manila envelope, her expression professionally neutral. "Have a good day." My hands shook as I took the packet. The partners beside me exchanged glances, their faces carefully blank. "Everything okay, Sybilla?" asked Marcus Webb, the senior partner. "Fine," I managed. "Just personal business." I made it to the bathroom before my legs gave out. Locked in a stall, I tore open the envelope with trembling fingers. Petition for divorce. Grounds. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, cruel and inhumane treatment, adultery, temporary restraining order. I was prohibited from accessing joint accounts, removing items from the marital home, or contacting 17 named witnesses. Motion for exclusive use of marital residence. Nate wanted me out of our house. Motion for temporary custody. He wanted Grace. Financial affidavit. A forensic accounting of every penny I'd spent in the past 6 months, highlighted in yellow marker. The watch for Julian. Cash withdrawals I'd forgotten about. Credit card charges at restaurants where I'd met Julian to plan our jealousy test. 6 months of secret spending, laid out in black and white. My phone rang. David Chen, Nate's attorney. "Mrs. Vane, I assume you've received our filing. We need to discuss the terms of the temporary order." "I need a lawyer," I said. "That's advisable. In the meantime, you're required to vacate the marital residence by Friday at 5 p.m. You may take personal items only, clothing, toiletries, personal electronics, nothing else." "That's my home too." "Not according to the mortgage documents. The house is in your husband's name only, purchased before your marriage. You have no legal claim to it." I hadn't known that. In 8 years of marriage, I'd never looked at the deed. "What about Grace?" "Temporary custody has been awarded to Mr. Vane pending a full hearing. You'll have supervised visitation on weekends, assuming you comply with all terms of the restraining order." Supervised visitation, like I was a danger to my own daughter. "This is insane. I kissed someone at a party. That's not grounds for all this." "Mrs. Vane, we have video evidence of you coaching the other party, text messages detailing your plan to punish your husband, financial records showing you used marital funds to purchase gifts for your affair partner. Witness statements describing the calculated nature of your actions. This goes far beyond kissing someone at a party." Affair partner. That's what Julian was now, legally speaking. I need time to find representation. Of course, the temporary hearing is scheduled for next Wednesday. I'd suggest you use that time wisely. I spent the rest of the day calling divorce attorneys. The first 3 declined to represent me after hearing the basic facts. The fourth, a woman named Patricia Mills, agreed to meet but warned me that my case would be challenging. Challenging was lawyer speak for, "You're screwed." That evening I sat in a hotel room near my office, surrounded by the personal items I'd managed to pack before Nate returned home. Grace's picture on the nightstand, my laptop, a suitcase full of work clothes that suddenly felt like costumes for a life I was no longer allowed to live. Mara had texted, "Heard about the papers. I'm sorry it came to this." My sister Tessa had called, but I'd let it go to voicemail. Sib, Mum and Dad saw the court filing online. "We need to talk." Court filings were public record. My colleagues, my clients, my neighbors, they could all read about my intentional infliction of emotional distress and cruel and inhumane treatment. My phone rang. Patricia Mills, my new attorney. "I've reviewed the initial filing," she said without preamble. "We need to discuss strategy. They're asking for attorney fees, which suggests they're confident in their case. The financial records are problematic, and the witness statements paint a very unflattering picture. What are my options? Settlement. We negotiate the best terms we can and avoid a trial. Because if this goes to trial, Mrs. Vane, you're going to lose. Badly. What kind of settlement? Minimal spousal support, if any. Shared custody if we're lucky, though the supervised visitation suggests they're building a case for primary custody. You'll keep your retirement accounts and personal property. But the house, the joint savings, the investment portfolio, most of that will go to him. 8 years of marriage, reduced to a hotel room and whatever scraps Nate's attorney was willing to throw me. There's something else, Patricia continued. I'm required to inform you that if you continue to contact the witnesses or attempt to interfere with your husband's case in any way, you could face criminal charges for harassment and intimidation. I haven't contacted anyone. Good, keep it that way. Your husband is a forensic accountant who specializes in divorce cases. He knows exactly how to build an airtight case, and he's doing it methodically. Your best option is to comply with all court orders and hope we can negotiate reasonable terms. After she hung up, I sat in the dark hotel room, staring at Grace's picture. My daughter, who would now spend weekends with me in supervised visits like I was some kind of criminal. All because I'd wanted my husband to show some emotion. All because I'd thought I was clever enough to test his love. All because I'd kissed Julian Hart at midnight on New Year's Eve. The deposition was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at David Chen's downtown office. I arrived with Patricia Mills, who'd warned me to answer only what was asked and volunteer nothing. They're going to try to get you to admit to planning this as punishment, she'd said during our prep session. Don't take the bait. The conference room was sterile and cold, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Nate sat beside his attorney, wearing the navy suit I'd bought him for Christmas 2 years ago. He didn't look at me when I entered. Before we begin, David Chen said, I'd like to enter into evidence several exhibits we've prepared. He slid a binder across the table. Patricia opened it, her face growing grimmer with each page. Exhibit A. Doorbell camera footage, timestamped and enhanced, showing me greeting Julian with specific instructions about where to stand, how to act, when to approach me at midnight. Exhibit B. Text messages retrieved from cloud backup, including the deleted ones I'd thought were gone forever. This will wake him up or I'll make him sorry. He needs to learn what he could lose. Time to test his jealousy properly. Exhibit C. Financial records showing the watch purchase, cash withdrawals, and restaurant charges where Julian and I had met to plan. Exhibit D. Witness statements from 4 party guests, each describing my behavior as calculated, cruel, and deliberately humiliating. Exhibit E, screenshots from the group chat I'd been excluded from, where my friends dissected my actions in real time. But the worst was Exhibit F, Mara's deposition transcript. My best friend since college had testified under oath about our conversations, about how I'd described my marriage as boring and Nate as emotionally unavailable, about how I'd said I needed to shake things up and make him fight for me, about how I'd admitted the kiss was meant to punish him for being too calm. "Mrs. Vane," David Chen began, "did you invite Julian Hart to your New Year's Eve party with the specific intention of kissing him in front of your husband?" "I invoke my Fifth Amendment right," I said, following Patricia's coaching. "Did you use marital funds to purchase a gift for Mr. Hart as part of this plan?" Fifth Amendment. "Did you tell your friend Mara Klein that you intended to punish your husband for his lack of emotional response?" Fifth Amendment. It went on for 2 hours, every question designed to trap me into admitting premeditation, calculation, deliberate cruelty. Every answer, the same constitutional dodge that made me look guilty as hell. When we broke for lunch, Patricia pulled me aside. "They have everything, Sybilla. Video, texts, financial records, witness testimony. Your best friend testified against you under oath. This isn't a case we can win." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we need to accept whatever settlement they offer, because if this goes to trial, the judge is going to see you as a manipulative spouse who used psychological warfare against your husband. That's not a sympathetic plaintiff." That afternoon, David Chen presented their settlement offer. Nate would keep the house, the investment accounts, and primary custody of Grace. I would get my retirement funds, my car, and supervised visitation every other weekend. No spousal support. I would pay my own attorney fees plus half of Nate's. "This is everything," I whispered to Patricia, my voice cracking in the sterile conference room. "He's taking everything." "He's entitled to it under state law, given the circumstances," Patricia replied, not unkindly. "The adultery and emotional abuse grounds give him significant leverage. The emails, the bridesmaid statements, the hotel footage, it's not just infidelity, it's premeditated deception during the wedding itself. That crosses into fraud territory, even for divorce purposes." "It was one kiss," I protested, the words sounding pathetic even to me. Patricia slid the settlement proposal across the table. "It was premeditated psychological manipulation, documented in your own words and witnessed by multiple parties. You coordinated the timing, used your own bridesmaids as lookouts, slipped away during your reception. The court will see intent to deceive and betray on the day vows were exchanged. Take the deal, Sybilla. It's better than what you'll get at trial." Across the polished oak, Nate sat motionless, reviewing documents with the same methodical precision he once used to plan our honeymoon itinerary. No raised voice, no trembling hands, no flicker of the man who used to laugh at my terrible puns. Just cold, legal efficiency. His navy tie was knotted perfectly. His cufflinks caught the overhead light like tiny accusations. "I need time to think." "You have 24 hours, David Chen said quietly. "After that, the offer expires and we proceed to trial. Discovery will be brutal. Every text, every deleted message they can subpoena, every friend who will be deposed. You really want Grace hearing testimony about her mother's closure meeting in a service corridor." The word Grace landed like a slap. "Our daughter, 4 years old, still asking why Daddy doesn't come home anymore." I pictured her clutching the stuffed rabbit Nate bought her the day she was born, the one she called Hop Hop. Would she understand why Mommy was suddenly the villain in every story? That night, in the dim hotel room that smelled faintly of industrial cleaner, I called my parents on speaker while staring at Grace's school photo taped to the mirror. "We saw the court documents online," my father said immediately, his voice heavy with the kind of disappointment that settles into bones. "Sybilla, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking my husband didn't love me anymore." The excuse tasted like ash. "I was thinking I needed to do something to wake him up." By humiliating him in front of his entire family and friends. Dad's tone sharpened. By turning your wedding into a public spectacle. The local paper ran the story, Syb. People at church are asking questions. Your brother had to explain to his kids why Aunt Sybilla's picture is everywhere. By showing some emotion, I snapped, tears burning. Any emotion. Do you know what it's like being married to someone who treats you like a business partner? No fights, no passion, just schedules and efficiency, and we'll discuss that later? I felt invisible. My mother took the phone. Her voice was softer, but no less cutting. Sweetheart, we love you, but we can't support you financially through a trial. Not after seeing what you did. The videos, the messages. It's not just a mistake, it's cruel. Take the settlement, try to rebuild your relationship with Grace before she's old enough to read the headlines herself. They hung up gently, the click louder than any shout. I curled on the stiff hotel bedspread, clutching Grace's photo to my chest. In it, she grinned with missing front teeth, pigtails lopsided because Nate had tried to braid them himself that morning. I remembered how he'd laughed, actually laughed, when the ribbons came out uneven. That laugh felt like a lifetime ago. I'd tested my husband's love, the way a child tests gravity by stepping off a roof. I wanted fireworks, proof he cared enough to fight. Instead, I got precision demolition, evidence gathered, timelines reconstructed, leverage applied without mercy. Nate hadn't raged or begged. He'd simply documented my destruction and presented it in neat chronological order. The settlement demanded primary custody for him, supervised visitation for me until I completed 6 months of court-ordered therapy. I would keep my car and personal belongings. He kept the house, most of the savings, and, most devastating, Grace 80% of the time. I would pay child support based on my freelance income, which had already dried up since the scandal broke. My name was now synonymous with betrayal in every local search result. 23 hours and 40 minutes later, I sat across from David Chen again, pen trembling in my hand. "I'll sign," I said. Nate didn't look triumphant. He simply nodded once, the same economical gesture he used when a project plan was approved. As I scrawled my name on the last page, I understood the final, terrible truth. I hadn't destroyed our marriage to prove he loved me. I'd destroyed it to prove I still existed. And in the end, the only thing left was the echo of my own choices, cold and methodical and utterly devastating. I walked out into the grey January afternoon, the signed papers heavy in my purse. Somewhere, Grace was probably colouring at the kitchen table Nate kept so perfectly organised. I wondered if she'd ask for me tonight. I wondered if she'd still call me Mommy when the supervised visits began. I signed the settlement agreement the next morning. Patricia Mills walked me through each provision with clinical detachment. Primary custody to Nate. Supervised visitation for me. The house, investments and savings accounts all his. My retirement fund and car all mine. No spousal support. Attorney fees split. "There's one additional provision," she said, pointing to the final page. "A non-disclosure agreement. You cannot discuss the details of this case publicly, on social media, or with any third parties except immediate family." "He's silencing me." "He's protecting himself and your daughter from further publicity. Sign it, Sybilla." I signed. The final hearing was scheduled for the following Friday at the county courthouse. A formality, Patricia assured me. The judge would review our settlement agreement, confirm both parties consented, and issue the decree. "Will Nate be there?" "Yes. And given the circumstances, I'd recommend minimal interaction. Let me handle any necessary communication." I spent the week moving my belongings out of the hotel and into a small apartment across town. 1 bedroom, basic furniture, a far cry from the suburban showcase I'd called home for 8 years. Grace came for her first supervised visit that Saturday. The court-appointed supervisor, a stern woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, sat in my living room while my daughter and I tried to pretend everything was normal. "Why can't I stay overnight anymore, Mom?" Grace asked, her 10-year-old face scrunched with confusion. "It's just temporary, sweetheart, until some grown-up stuff gets sorted out." "Is it because of what you did at the party?" My blood ran cold. "What do you know about the party?" "Grandma Judith said you made Dad very sad. She said you kissed another man and it hurt his feelings." I wanted to explain, to justify, to make her understand that I'd only been trying to save our family. Instead, I hugged her close and said, "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, big mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes have consequences." "Do you still love Dad?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Did I still love him? Or had I just loved the idea of making him jealous, of forcing him to fight for me? "I love our family," I said finally, "and I'm sorry I hurt it." Friday morning arrived grey and cold. The courthouse was the imposing building downtown, all marble columns and authority. I met Patricia in the lobby, where she handed me a folder containing the final decree. "The judge will call your case, review the settlement and ask if you agree to the terms. Say yes. That's it." We took the elevator to the 4th floor, where family court was in session. The hallway was full of other broken families, couples avoiding eye contact, children clutching social workers' hands, attorneys wheeling briefcases full of other people's misery. "Vane versus Vane," the bailiff called. We entered the courtroom, where Judge Patricia Morrison presided from behind an imposing wooden bench. Nate was already seated with David Chen, his posture straight and professional. He still didn't look at me. "I've reviewed the settlement agreement," Judge Morrison said, her voice echoing in the high-ceilinged room. "Mr. Vane, do you agree to these terms?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Mrs. Vane, do you agree to these terms?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Very well. I'm prepared to grant the divorce decree. However, I want to address something first." She removed her reading glasses and looked directly at me. "Mrs. Vane, I've reviewed the evidence in this case. The video footage, the text messages, the witness statements. What you did to your husband constitutes deliberate emotional abuse. You planned and executed a public humiliation designed to cause psychological harm." My face burned with shame as her words echoed through the courtroom. "The court finds that your actions were calculated, premeditated, and cruel. You used another person as a weapon against your spouse, then attempted to cover up your actions by deleting evidence and manipulating witnesses." Patricia squeezed my arm, warning me to stay silent. "This behavior is particularly troubling, given that a minor child was involved. Your daughter will undoubtedly be affected by the dissolution of her parents' marriage, a dissolution caused entirely by your poor judgment." The air conditioning hummed overhead, raising goosebumps on my arms as the judge's words sank in. "Therefore, this court grants the divorce on grounds of cruel and inhumane treatment. Primary custody is awarded to Mr. Vane, with supervised visitation for Mrs. Vane pending completion of court-ordered counseling. The financial settlement as agreed is approved." She banged her gavel. "Additionally, Mrs. Vane, you are ordered to pay Mr. Vane's attorney fees in full, given that your documented deception and manipulation necessitated extensive legal work to protect his interests." More money I didn't have, for a case I'd caused by trying to test my husband's love. "This court is adjourned." As people filed out of the courtroom, I sat frozen in my chair. 8 years of marriage ended with the bang of a gavel and a judicial finding that I was an emotional abuser. Nate finally looked at me as he packed his briefcase. His eyes held no anger, no satisfaction, no emotion at all, just the same calm, methodical assessment he'd always shown. He'd won completely: the house, our daughter, our assets, and most importantly, the moral high ground. I was the villain in this story, officially and legally. My jealousy test had worked perfectly. I'd finally provoked an emotional response from my husband. Unfortunately, that response was methodical, devastating revenge served with legal precision. As I walked out of the courthouse into the cold January air, I realized that Nate had been showing me love all along. In his steady reliability, his quiet support, his refusal to engage in dramatic games. I'd just been too blind to recognize it until I'd destroyed it forever. The process server's voice echoed in my memory. You've been served. But I'd been serving myself all along, serving myself a lesson in the difference between love and manipulation, between passion and cruelty, between testing someone and losing them completely. I'd wanted my husband to fight for our marriage. Instead, I'd given him every reason to fight